artificial intelligence, where all of the bots and technology is, we're very much still in infancy period, meaning we might have reached like 6 months if you were to think of like human age. Cute, adorable baby that is like still trying to figure out the world around them. For years, people have been asking about different ways and methods that one can make money. I've been asking the same question myself ever since I was a little kid, and it's the same question that my nephew asks me now. And that might be the question that you might have. So if that is of interest to you, today we're going to cover 4 different methods that I know of that one can make money. And those, of course, are lined up right above me that you can read. And that is a job, investing or trading, building a business, or simply borrowing the money. Now, just because the 4 of them are listed out here doesn't mean that they work independently. Some of them can, but they can also work intertwined. So, for example, I could have a job, but I also could be building a business on the side while I'm investing and borrowing money, right? Sometimes I might be in a business that actually deals with investing or trading as well, and maybe I will borrow the money for that investment or trading or for ability to start a business. So sometimes you're going to have combinations of things that you can do, but you can also do it on its own. For example, I could be building a business that has nothing to do with investing or trading, and maybe I'm not interested in borrowing at all whatsoever in order to start up my business. That is a methodology that some folks prefer to go into business with. There's some individuals that are just interested in investing solely, and that's all they do, and that is how they make money. Some of them are on the trading side, some just have jobs, and then there's folks that only thing they do is actually borrow money, and then they use that in order to live and survive. Now, typically, if you just live off of borrowing, there's additional activities that kind of have to take place in order for that work, and I will explain in a moment exactly kind of how that all works. Over here on the side, you also might see that there are 5 different letters and kind of almost putting in a weird acronym that says Hertz. What in the world is that? So here's what that stands for. P stands for profitability. So when I consider different ways to make money, I also want to consider the profitability factor of getting that vehicle, how profitable is this going to be. I consider the ease of getting into it or ease of accomplishing something or having it ongoing. R stands for risk assessment of that whole component. T stands for taxes, meaning how much is this going to cost me when it comes to paying the taxes that all of us have to do. And then S stands for scalability, meaning can I grow this and how much can I grow this? So let's kind of talk about some of these different things. And again, this is not going to be in-depth hours of education. These are just overview of things that are going to help you potentially start thinking maybe a bit differently about different ways to make money. So job is really going to, when we consider all of these things, job is really going to depend on what kind of job we're talking about. If we're talking about entry-level position, maybe a cashier, for example, that doesn't need a lot of schooling or specialized education. It might need some on-the-job training for me to learn how to use that particular machine. I might need to have some specialized abilities like being able to work with all kinds of people, being friendly even when my feet are tired, being able to stand for hours, being able to answer questions and understand what's happening in the store, and quickly be able to find the pricing to different products when I am assisting my customers. That would be an example of one job. Now, that job is not going to be as profitable as perhaps becoming a CEO of a large public company like Bank of America, for example. That one is likely going to require a whole lot more of experience, a whole lot more of education, and a whole lot more of difficulty of getting into that position, but profitability there is probably going to be much higher because I'm probably going to get a much higher salary in addition to some bonuses, in addition to stock share. So making profitability of that vehicle, let's call it that, of that venture, much higher than that of a cashier, for example. So that's kind of where the job is going to be. So when you're thinking of a job, start thinking of the industry that you are considering, as well as the level of the job. Is it an entry level, mid-level, or is it going to be something like the corporate suite, so C-suite level? Obviously, the higher up the chain you go, the more challenging it's going to be, but the more profitable most likely is going to be. You also want to consider and think about, is it an hourly paid? Is it a salary? Is it commission? Is it a combination of some of those things? Now, here's some of the challenges with jobs in general. Of course, it's going to differ from the type of job, from the industry. But for example, if we're thinking of just an hourly job, the problem with that is that whether you are getting paid $15 an hour, $5 an hour, $500 an hour, $5,000 an hour. The problem with the hourly pay is that you are limited to the number of hours that exist in a day. And as far as I know, all of us are still limited to only 24. So that is the problem with the hourly pay schedule. The salary is a bit different, but there are challenges with that as well. And here's kind of how I think about that. Is that salary job may be $50,000, maybe $100,000, maybe $1 million, or even $10 million. The challenge and the difference is that whether I am performing at my peak or I am performing barely enough to get by, the amount of money I am getting is the same. And so if there's two of us in a particular job, say that there's me and Bob is high achieving, early to job, late to leave, doing above and beyond, and he gets paid $100,000, and I am the sort of come in right around the time we're supposed to start. I leave a bit early, my lunches are a bit longer. I'm still doing my job, but maybe I'm not performing as high as Bob. But I also make the same amount of money. The challenge with that is that one of us or both of us are going to be highly dissatisfied with it because Bob might look and be like, look, that guy over there is doing nothing and he gets paid the same amount that I do and gets the exact same title that I have. So here's what ends up happening. Either Bob starts slacking off or Bob ends up leaving, creating a challenge for the company. That is kind of problematic, and that's where salaries end up being a bit challenging as well. Then you have commissions, which are interesting because you get paid based off of the performance, but sometimes some positions can be a bit more tricky to pay in that regard. For example, how do you measure some of the performance and how do you do commission-based pay for a teacher or a heart surgeon? It's a bit more challenging. And sometimes when we get compensated, when our metrics is a bit off, we might start getting compensated for things that maybe we shouldn't value as much. I'm going to pick on insurance for now. And if you are in an insurance industry, I apologize. I don't know you, so this is not a personal pick on you, but I'm going to pick on it just a bit. Let's take health insurance, for example. Health insurance is one of those things that everybody should have, but the problematic components are that there are certain things, it's very much commission-based industry. That's how people get paid. Well, that means you got to enroll more people, and when you enroll them, like there are a combination of things that ends up happening that now we're rewarding when companies get more people through it. That means that we have to have more sick people. That means that we have to have more medicine being sent through. The equation is sort of off. It doesn't make sense, and the cost of it goes up, and now we're finding ourselves having to have an insurance agency tells us and tell the doctors whether a patient should be taking a particular medicine. That doesn't make sense to me. You may disagree with me, but that's kind of how I see it. So that's sort of a different ways to get paid, but it doesn't always work out that way. I don't know that I have a solution. And if you do, please do send it down below and put it in the comments, because who knows? We are looking all for solutions of how do we solve this problem. And as somebody who, runs businesses and hires people, I always start thinking of what are the best ways to pay somebody. And I don't know that I have a solution for it. And I don't know that I haven't seen very much solutions happening out there with that. So if you have a solution, please let us all know, because I think we can all use it. Now, jumping in. So we covered the profitability and expenses. Let's talk a little bit about risk. I find that having a job only can be pretty risky proposition. The reason I say is because businesses go in and out of business all the time. They might have to lower the amount of employees they have, meaning that jobs are not as secure as we would think them. Furthermore, with the technology being so developed and growing, and the age of AI is upon us, a lot of us are going to be replaced in jobs. And of course, people are thinking of like bus drivers with all of the, or the commercial truck drivers and that kind of stuff with all of the self-driving cars. But we can start thinking of authors and writers, because there's AI that can do that. We can start thinking of publishers. We can start thinking of the traders, because AI can do that as well. And some of these things they might not be as good at right now, but we are in that learning stage. If you were to think of where AI, I don't know where AI came from, AI, artificial intelligence, where all of the bots and technology is, we're very much still in infancy period, meaning we might have reached like 6 months if you were to think of like human age. Cute, adorable baby that is like still trying to figure out the world around them. But these puppies have great future ahead of them. And while I don't know what it all holds, I do believe that it's going to really take on. So I would rank jobs as potentially highly risky. And of course, they're going to depend on the type of job that you might have. Which ones are going to go, which ones are going to stay, I don't know. I know that a lot of the industries are going to look very different in 5, 10, 20 years from now than they do today. And I also know that there will be jobs created that we can't even fathom right now. So I would put that in the riskier of the categories. When it comes to the taxes, jobs are the heaviest taxed components of all of these different ones. They can be taxed anywhere from 25% on the low end, all the way up to like 60, even 80% in some European countries, if you can believe that. It's sort of, if you think about that, if you are at a 50% tax rate, that means for 50% of the year, you are working for the taxes only. So that means January through June, you are working for your government only. It's only July until December that you get to work for yourself. That's kind of how I think about it. And then scalability. I can't scale this. Like if I have a job, they pretty much expect me to show up and do the job. So scalability is 0. So job can be a pretty cool way to make money, but there are some challenges with it. Now let's jump on to trading and investing. When we think about trading and investing, there are two different categories. Trading is more of something that you go in and you're constantly buying and selling, and you're basically playing on the arbitrage. If you don't know what arbitrage is, I actually have done the video on arbitrage where I explain what the term is and how you can play around with it. But the basic concept is you buy low, you sell high, you make money in the difference. That's what the trading is. It could be trading of the stocks, but it could be also trading of the goods like a jacket or shirt or anything else you can imagine. Investing is more on the longer spectrum of things, where maybe I purchase a particular asset that is going to be providing cash flow over the time and is going to be paying. And that's kind of how I think about it. A great example of that is purchasing a stock that pays dividend, and you hold on to it, and the dividend is actually what is paying and providing some of this coverage of expenses. Another great way to think about it would be real estate. If you purchase a home or multiple homes or apartment building, office building, whatever, and all of that rent that is coming in covers all of the expenses. Of course, it should cover that because that's a positive cash flow. And then whatever money is left over is what's covering your living expenses. Now, if you can get yourself to the point where your investment income covers all of your living expenses, you can consider yourself financially independent. That's the basic methodology and basic formula, if you would, for how do you become financially free or financially independent. That's it. That's if you ever wonder. So let's look at our Hertz components and find out how trading and investing really work out. Profitability. This can be infinite profitability. Here's kind of how to think about infinite. The profitability is counted of like the money that you put in and the money that goes out. So if I purchase something and I have, say I put $10 in and I get $1 out, that means I have 10% return on my investment, right? But if I purchase something at $10 in and I get 100 out, now we're talking I'm at 10x as opposed to 10%. And then, of course, there are opportunities and ways where I would put 0 of my money in and say that I even get a 1 or 100 or even more. Well, my return is then infinite. That is basically how that is being calculated. So profitability can be super high when it comes to trading and investing. The ease of it can be relatively easy to get in, but it can be a bit more complex to get good at it. Best way to do it is to actually spend a little bit of time, money, and effort and energy to go out and learn how to do that stuff. Then go out and try it with smaller scale of things. As you get better, you can start getting better deals, start doing more investments, more trades, and that's kind of how things would work out. When it comes to risk, it really depends. It could be potentially riskier. And the biggest risk components is with the beginners, with newbies, when they don't know what they're doing. So the biggest risk component within investing and trading is us, the investors and traders. So you reduce that risk by education and by starting small, learning from your mistakes, adjusting from it, and then implementing what you have learned. So from the risk component, there's some risks associated with it, but it's again manageable. Taxes. From the tax component, investing and trading actually has much more preferred than just a mere job. Now, again, it depends on what you're investing in and what you're trading, what you're doing. If you're more of the trading of, say, like shirts and that kind of stuff, you are in trading, but you are in business. And so now, depending on entity that you have, your taxes are going to vary. They can go anywhere from 20% if we are just looking at capital gains, right? Sometimes 15%, but it could be as high as 40 and 60% if you don't have the right entity structure. So it really depends. If we're looking at longer term investments, it can go all the way down to 0%. It could go all the way down to 0 taxes. So this one is very variable, and it's really cool because it gives us a lot of room to move around, whereas job only didn't give us much of anything. It's based off of how much money you earn, and that's it. So getting into the investments even while you have a job does have a strong potential to allow you to reduce your taxable income, and that is pretty awesome. Scalability, investing and trading does have a great way to create scalability within it, because you can start getting more assets as you get better and you get more profitable. If you're in the trading, you can actually hire traders to do stuff. You can expand on the business, so you could incorporate technology to help you with your things, especially once you figure out your own way of doing things. You can write your own programs and algorithms to help you trade if we're thinking about trading paper assets, for example. So I would rank as investing and trading as a cool way to go out and make money. Now, let's jump on to the business. Business is kind of interesting because, again, it really depends on when we're thinking business of what exactly are we thinking about. Business is this giant umbrella, if you were to think about it. It's a huge thing that ranges anywhere from small mom and pop type shop where maybe it's like a small regional gas station that has like one gas pump and a tiny little cubicle thing, or maybe a food truck. And it could go all the way to giant conglomerate. Think something like Boeing, for example, or Virgin, right? Those are kind of brands, Nike. Those are huge corporations that hire thousands of people in order to operate. So business is really going to depend on what it is. Industries are going to matter as well when we're thinking about business. Are you going into the industries that are on the rise and on the sort of up cycle, or are you looking at industries that are on the down cycle and they're being done and over with? Those are all of the things that really matter when it comes to business. So when we start looking at our acronyms, when we talk about profitability, part of it is going to be, are you good at it? Are you just starting out? Do you have partners? Do you have investors? All of the components are going to matter, and the industry that you're in, what your marketing is. But profitability when it comes to business could be huge. I mean, just look at Jeff Bezos or whomever you want, anybody who's built a giant company. You can easily see that profitability can be huge. However, when we think about the ease, getting into the business is not the easiest component in it. There's a lot of complexities with starting a business, and I'm not talking about like just starting a business, like going out and filing for incorporation. That's pretty darn easy and pretty darn cheap. It's everything else that happens afterwards of what your business is and who are your customers and how you're going to serve them, how you're going to sell, how you're going to be profitable, what is your business model, what is your marketing strategy, how are you going to keep those customers, are they ongoing, one time, what industry you're in, how good are you at it. All of those components matter when it comes to business. And so while I do want to point all of that out, it's impossible to talk about business as sort of one thing when it could be so many small minutia things, and all of those things matter and matter a lot. So when we talk about profitability, awesome. When we talk about ease, that is going to be very complex, very challenging. Some people hit it out of the park and their first try. Vast majority of individuals who have ever built a business have failed time and time and time again. Most people, when they think about the business, when they think about entrepreneurs and becoming successful, everybody thinks that people have become like an overnight success. Meanwhile, it has taken them 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years to get there. So when you think of starting your own business, start thinking of, am I willing to be overnight success 50 years in the going? And if the answer is no, I don't want to do that, then just skip the business. There's other ways to make money. That's why we're covering this stuff. Let's talk about risk. So business actually can be very risky, especially at the beginning. Now, the biggest part of the risk when it comes to business is, again, us as business owners and entrepreneurs, because we're starting something new that we have never done. It is not unheard of, and I think everybody knows it, the vast majority of businesses will fail their first year, even more within 5 years, and even more within 10 to 15 years. So I have started multiple businesses. I think my first business was the card box corner. That is when you find a corner of the street, you find a card box, and you put some stuff on it, hoping to sell it to the people passing by. That was my first business. I no longer have it. It lasted maybe a weekend. I tried something else. It failed. So I had a lot of businesses that failed, but I also have a business that I've had for about 8, 9 years now, a little bit more than that. And so that's pretty exciting. But I also know that there have been a lot of businesses that have failed. There are businesses that I started that didn't make it past 1, 2, 3 years that I had to close down, and that was that. So there's a lot of risk when it comes to business, and part of it is really about developing who we are and how we run, building a team, building the team of advisors and people that will help us run the stuff, but really growing ourselves. So if you're thinking about getting into entrepreneurship and business, part of it is go for it, do it, but do expect that it is going to be long hours, a lot of work, a lot of team, a lot of mentoring that you'll have to do, and a steep learning curve. And if you are willing to do that, growing a business, it really is a different breed of people, and I love it. I love the thrive and the drive and the excitement of it. Even when things don't work out, it is always a fun ride. So if that's what you're interested in, go for it. Totally do it. Let's talk about taxes and taxation. Now, depending on how you structure it, I've already mentioned that when we talked about business or investing and trading, depending on how you structure depends how you're going to pay taxes. If you go as a sort of solopreneur kind of non-entity creation, your taxes might be higher. If you go into partnership, it might be slightly lower. So the best advice that I can give you is to consult with a tax professional, typically a CPA. Tell them what you're looking to do and have them give you, from the tax perspective, of what makes the most sense for you, because that is going to be very individualist piece. Now, you also want to consult an attorney when it comes to entity component to say, based off of what I'm looking to do, what are the best legal protections for me? Combining those two will give you the best answer for you of what will be the safest thing and the most tax profitable thing to do. Now, if you're just starting out and just want to kind of see how this whole thing goes and it's not a high risk component, then you can just sort of start it out as a solo, sort of going into businesses, seeing how things work. I personally prefer to go in with an entity right from the bat, even if it's not going to be successful, just because I believe that there are ways to protect things, but I also happen to have assets and different things happening, and that's the reason why I prefer to start with an entity and put a little bit of money to protect myself from the get-go. Finally, scalability. As you likely have guessed, businesses could be easily scaled and are super, if you're looking to scale out and build something that is giant and that you can step away but make money for the rest of your life from, building a business is a way to do that. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to build a business. Of course, typically you would start it, and depending kind of who you are, how much resources you have, who you have on a team, what you're able to do, you could really go into becoming a business owner without doing any work whatsoever, hiring a team that does everything. I'm talking like the C-suite all the way down to the frontline staff, and all you are is sort of the chairman and the owner, and you just get money from it. So that ends up being very similar to the investor component, where you start having passive cash flow. Once you get to that component, again, you reach financial independence through those components. Final piece that I want to cover today is borrow. Now, people say, how do you make money when you borrow? Well, it's very simple. Look, borrowing money today is pretty easy and it's pretty darn cheap, especially if you are big bank or big corporation. But even the little guys, just like you and I, can play with that structure and with that strategy. And that is basically, you want to go out there and you want to borrow money that you typically get at a much lower rate. Now, once you borrow it, of course, you're borrowing it, you're going to have to pay it back. Depending at the interest that you're being charged for that money borrowed, depends on how much money you have to pay back and by when. So what you need to do is, if you're going to play, I don't know why I turned this way. I could have turned this way. Hello. But if you're going to borrow, you're going to need to play with either business or investing or trading. And the goal really basically is that you're going to borrow money at a much lower percent than you are going to invest either in business or in an investment vehicle of some sort. So for example, let's say that I can borrow $100 for 0% for 2 years. It's possible. Those things do exist out there. And let's say that I'm going to use that $100 to invest in my business, that I'm going to go out and buy some inventory. I'm going to open my Shopify account and I am going to sell those things online, and I have 2 years to make more than $100. Because I borrowed the 0%, I only owe $100 and I have 2 years to pay it back. if I can go and buy enough inventory for that amount of money, say that I buy, I don't know, glasses. Let's say I buy eyeglasses, they cost me $10 a piece. I can buy 10 of those. Maybe I can sell them for 20 bucks online. I open Shopify or whatever store you want to open up, and I can go out, I sell them, and I sell them at $20 a piece. That means after I buy after I sell 5 of them, I have enough money that I can pay back my loan and still make $100. But maybe if I do it in 6 months, maybe I'll buy 10 more pairs, see if I can make them, and that's basically how you can sometimes make money, by just borrowing. So if you're going to borrow, make sure that you are borrowing for something smart. What you don't want to borrow money is to buy a new jacket so that you can look good. What you want to borrow money and make money with it is to be able to buy an asset of some sort or an inventory of some sort, have it for productive purposes, and at that point, borrowing money does make sense. You, of course, want to make sure that you do have a plan of how you're going to repay back that money. I hope this was helpful to you and that you have learned a whole lot. If you are liking this content, please do subscribe, give me thumbs up, let me know how we're doing. If you have any questions or things you want to learn or have any other ideas that I didn't cover here, feel free to comment below, and I look forward to reading and responding. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay forever money blessed, and do remember, you are only one deal away. I want you to be happy. Don't you want to be happy? I want to be happy.